Richards trying to scoot in there alone. It pinballs to the crease.
Let's get it.
Oh my God! Here we go.
You're listening to the Street Bullies podcast with your hosts, Derek.
How you gonna get it, Bobby?
John. Matt Casey.
Unnecessary, but totally necessary.
And Cody.
What's not to love?
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Street Bullies. My name is Derek.
And I'm John. What's going on, everybody?
The reason for the laughter, John?
I'm not really good at being serious past 5:30, and this is just going to be hard for me.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty difficult conversation here. I'm sure we could all guess as to what that conversation is going to be. But before we do that, obviously, we're joined by the Matts. Matt Casey.
Hey, party people.
And Hoagie. And Hoagie.
Severely delayed over here.
That's how it
The
seems.
old internet bill.
It's delayed. Oh boy.
I thought he was just talking about his own dome piece.
Oh boy. All right.
Oh, sorry, we're not supposed to do that today.
But so let's cut to the chase. We all know everything that happened, and for those of you that live under a rock, the short of it really is that Pride Night was last night with the Flyers, and in warm-ups, the Flyers all donned a particular jersey with rainbow numbers, rainbow logo as well. Everybody partook in it except for one individual. That individual's name is Ivan Provorov, and it created... There's no two ways about it. It created an absolute shitstorm. And I'm not talking just in the sports world. It's reached national news levels. It is everywhere. It is a complete mess. International.
It was over in the UK. Yeah.
Yeah. So here we are, ready to discuss it. We're lighthearted. We have fun with this, but this is going to be a serious conversation. And obviously there's really nothing to say to preface this other than just let's get into it here. Let's just talk about Provorov's decision to do what he did or not take part in warm-ups, let's say. John, if you want to start us off here, let's just kick it off.
Yeah, I mean, I want to start by saying that I am not going to comment about Ivan Provorov's personal beliefs. I think that it would be quite hypocritical of me to say that I know Ivan Provorov personally and what he truly stands for, and I don't feel like I'm in a place to judge him, so I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to judge who he is as a human being. I also think when we're having a conversation about accepting and loving everybody, the last thing you should do is bash anyone. That being said, I am going to criticize and bash his decision a little bit. As I think people know in this show from listening to me, I am a teacher. I work in an elementary school and I represent an institution. My personal beliefs are sometimes put to the side for the betterment of that institution, right? It is my job as a teacher and a role model. I'm sorry, a role model to young children, which might be really hard to believe, but as a role model to kind of teach respect and love for all. Ivan Provorov is a part of the Philadelphia Flyers organization, had a responsibility to do that last night. Sometimes, you are allowed to have your personal beliefs. We all do. But sometimes you need to put the better of the whole group at the forefront. And I think that last night was a very selfish decision where it was like you have people here who obviously not everyone, but I guarantee you there were people who were there because it was Pride Night.
Oh, absolutely.
And I don't know if this was a situation where it was like people watching the game really understood what was going on until after the fact.
Yeah,
right.
I don't think they
Mhm.
But
there was speculation, absolutely,
right.
but
right. But you didn't really get the full picture till the end. And like, to me, it just completely takes away what seemed to be a really great night, and a real just celebration of life and difference and everybody's individuality. And it puts it all on Ivan Provorov. And I just think that from just a human standpoint, you need to be able to put your own personal stuff aside and do what's just right. And when the organization is hosting something and paying you over $6 million, I'm sorry, but you've got to step in line.
All valid points, all very fair points. I will divert this to Matt Casey here in regards to your take on all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with his stance. I think that not his excuse, but his his reasoning of having a religious issue. Okay, I get it to some extent. I just, like, from a personal standpoint, like, anyone who's putting religion in front of a lot of decisions like this, like, I don't care if you're Russian Orthodox, Roman Catholic, Jewish, Episcopalian, whatever it may be. Like, there's at some point where it's like, all right, sometimes common sense and decency may need to override there. But you know what? If someone's into religion, they think that that's the best path for their life, I'm in no position to tell them it's not, as long as it's not, reducing somebody's life, liberty, in the pursuit of happiness. Like, cool. If it works for you, it's your religion, man. That's awesome. But I think, to John's point, like, this was not a knee-jerk 10 minutes before warm-up time reaction. This was something that we have on good authority was, he told the team and he told his teammates he was going to do this weeks ago. And he told them why. And in some ways it's admirable. It's like, okay, you stuck to your convictions. Good for you. But I completely agree, John. Like, it was a selfish move. And I know we'll get into sort of how the locker room's affected a little bit, but like, the reality of this is he made a decision. And regardless of how it was originated or what his beliefs are, there's consequences with those decisions. And right now, those consequences are him probably getting crushed in the media, which I don't necessarily think he gives a crap about. It's going to...
Except that hasn't it been reported in the past that he is really sensitive about the...
Right, but I don't necessarily think he's out there trying to, like, improve his image. I don't think he's out there reading all the stuff.
He's not trying to be the media darling of the team.
Right. He's not going to have any endorsers pull their money because he wasn't a media darling anyway. Sure. It wasn't like Crosby did this and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, there goes Toyota. But he's going to get crushed, and people around him are going to get crushed as well. His girlfriend has a very popular pet account, and I was on there and just reading through, like, she did some innocent post and reading through, and it's all debates about it, and some of them positive, some of them negative. So I'm not pleased that he did it. I think it was selfish, but you know what? He's got a right to do it. And from the top to bottom, I don't want to deter that right as much as I do not agree with it.
Okay. All right. So not sure if Hoagie's going to continue to join us here. He's having some difficulties with the internet, but in terms of
on the subject,
yeah, I think he just got scared. He didn't want to talk about it, but I can accept that. But much to Matt Casey's point here, I think the big thing is there are going to be, and we're seeing, there's going to be consequences to this. Yes, it was a decision that was well thought out by Ivan Provorov, communicated to the team that he was going to do this. And whether he weighed those consequences or not, the reality is that's what he's going to be dealing with. Now, does he have the right to do it? Yes. No one can take that right away from him. There is a right to religion, practicing whatever faith you deem that you want to practice. That's freedom of religion. That is exactly what it is. Whether you agree with it or not doesn't matter, because again, I can sit here and say that I'm Catholic, and someone else could say that I'm Lutheran, and then there's a whole big debate. It doesn't matter. But I also think that we need to take this and what Ivan Provorov did say kind of at face value, because we have no other bias towards whether he feels one way or the other. He said he's accepting of all people, accepting of all this. And how are we supposed to not take that at face value?
Right.
You know, I get the outrage. I get the people that are upset because it seems like he doesn't stand for, but I don't think he necessarily stands against it after saying that he's accepting of it. It's against his beliefs. And if someone were to tell me, hey, it's against my beliefs that I don't want to do this, I respect that. I may not agree with it, but I respect that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, where a lot of people are failing to understand that they don't see it that way. They see this as an attack on the LGBTQ community, which
right.
respectfully to their own, okay, you know, that's how they feel, and they're warranted in feeling that way. But again, I'm going to use this term again. You have to take these things at face value. Mm-hmm. And there's no other real way to feel. I don't want to say there's no other real way to feel, but there's no other way to take it, because you're leaping there. You're stretching, essentially, is what I'm trying to say.
I think too, and Derek, I'm sorry if you're continuing to talk. I don't want to cut you off.
I would have just continued rambling.
But I think one of the things too is, it's like, one of the things I've learned is, like, you could have intentions, right? And I don't think that his intentions were surrounding any sort of homophobia. I really don't, right? But however it's perceived by others,
mm-hmm.
you know, that's a risk you have to be willing to take. I mm-hmm. think that in terms of the reflection of Ivan Provorov's character, I'm not going to go as far as to say that he hates homosexuals, or, you know,
absolutely not. Yeah,
I won't. Right. Yeah, I won't do it. But what I can say is, I think that we have a very selfish individual, and I don't think this is the first piece of evidence when it comes to this. I think it's the most extreme, because
it feeds the narrative. It feeds the previous narrative that he
absolutely.
I mean, and you just look at what he decided to do. He pushed everything else aside, you know, mm-hmm. and I know we're going to get into it, but his team, the organization, the people in the building, he put it all aside just to go, these are my beliefs. I'm standing by them. I'm using air quotes for those of you who are not watching me. I'm using my strength as an individual, you know, mm-hmm. to do this.
In a way, and I want to be careful about this, in a way it's admirable that he has that strong of a conviction. I think it speaks to his personality.
I think it's more naiveness, though.
But yes, when you factor everything in, yes,
naivete.
When you're naivete, when you consider the fact that it not only affected him, but his teammates, who could potentially have brothers, sisters, friends, family, you know, whatever, could have friends and family that are gay, are, you know, bisexual, whatever it might be, transgender. It affects more than him, and it is an incredibly selfish move. Like, I will admit that, and I believe that it is a very selfish move.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't necessarily fault a guy for sticking to his convictions. Like, I understand how that may come off to some people, but if your convictions are that strong, mm-hmm. and then you renege on those, how do you look at yourself? How do you battle internally with what you just did? I guess is the way that what I'm trying to say. You're going to have an internal struggle no matter what, and you're only, you know, the saying is, you're only as strong as your word. You're only as good as your word. Like, your actions too. I mean, I don't know. I guess I don't know where I'm trying to go with this, aside from, I think it's somewhat admirable that he is that strong in his convictions. Although, again, the optics are absolutely terrible.
Oh, they're horrible. There's no doubt about it. But you know, I would say it's a slippery slope too, because, you know, I saw multiple people come in and say, oh well, he wore the military appreciation night, or God forbid he does that. It's like this is a very, very real scenario, and like engage me for a second here.
Yep.
Our next military appreciation night where they wear stuff, Ivan or Panarin or Ovi could just be like, look, the U.S. military is waging a proxy war against our country. Like, if we are seen in this, like, hi, Ivan Fedotov, we're your roommate. Like, it's like they all have family back there. They all go back there in the summer. At least they did last time. Now, I know that that's different than religion. I get it, but it still falls into the conviction and like where you get in there. And if that's the case, and all of a sudden Ivan or any of the Russians are like, hey, man, sorry, we're not wearing the military appreciation jerseys, you're going to have an uproar from probably the other side of the aisle from
that are currently defending him.
Right. But I don't agree with it, but I don't blame them. Like,
can I ask you a question, Casey?
Yeah.
So let's play with that for a second, right? I feel like there's a way to go about that where you can come up with a statement or have a team or your team come up with a statement where it's like, due to the current, environment, global, internationally, whatever, such and such players decide not to. And I think that a reasonable, now how many of those actually exist, a reasonable fan would understand that. Now let's go back to Pride Night.
Right. So
is there a possibility there?
Right. I mean, so let me ask you this, and this has been on my mind too. Do you think it was better? I heard some numbskulls on a podcast say, oh, he should have gone out just with his regular warm-up jersey on. And I said, absolutely not. Because then you are taking away all the focus on that moment for the other 19 guys who were in there doing something.
The people at the game probably didn't even realize that Ivan Provorov wasn't out there.
The third period when it was confirmed.
Now, I want to stop you guys for a second, and I'm sorry, but Hoagie's back with us. And before we go too far, I want to get Hoagie's take on all of this so that we can kind of, reassess and get back to where we were.
Thanks, Eric.
That's why I'm here, man.
How's it going, guys? I've been, and now the cat wants to chime in too. I've been struggling with this all day. I didn't want to be on Twitter all day because it's just been an uproar of constant battles and fights and this and that, and it's been a headache all day. And I hate what he did. I feel like you have team that put on this night with pride. Like Lawton and JVR put a lot of work into this, and they're proud of what they do. And I just think it was a shitty move. He was kind of brass in his interview, which I understand. He had the role. He wanted to talk hockey and leave it at that. But there was one question during that interview where a guy was like, he started talking about the warm up. It was going to be a hockey question, 100%. And Provorov just cut him off. And the guy was going to say, like, since you didn't skate in warm ups, like, how do you prepare for the game in that type of sense? And he just cut him off. And I was like, dude, listen to him first. Wait for the question. Like he was just so brass and rude, and he was standing for that belief that what he did, he thought was right. And it's kind of a kick in the nuts to the organization, to the NHL. Like I don't stand with where everybody else believes.
Sure.
No.
Understood. Now, if you can remember back to your point, Casey, I'm sorry to cut you off.
So I think we agree that throwing him out there without the jersey on would have been an even worse move. So the other calls were, do you scratch him? Do you bench him? And I say, absolutely friggin' not.
Cannot.
No way in hell, because that
You can't.
very easily flips into the NHL and the Flyers are now against freedom of religion.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. You're not going to win no matter what.
No, it's a terrible situation.
Yeah. Like right now we're dealing with what we're dealing with because they didn't bench him. But if they bench him, then another side is coming in and saying that's ridiculous. That's freedom of religion. And you just tried to silence him by scratching him.
I mean, it arguably could be a bigger problem. right? I don't know
Yeah.
what kind of like legal issue that comes into for, silencing a constitutional right,
Right.
or
It's
I don't
in the
know. I mean, I
CBA.
don't know
Mhm.
I don't know the
But it
legalities
is.
behind
You
it, but
can't discriminate against the players or anything like that. Wasn't Torts asked after the game, did you think about scratching him or whatever? And Torts is like, absolutely not.
And he said no.
yeah,
Like
Yep.
And again, that goes
he
to
knew
the
he was going
fact
to
that
be in the lineup. No matter
he knew weeks
what.
before.
right.
And it's, I mean, again, it's a fine line to walk because no matter what you do, you will be scrutinized for your decision. So are you going to want to deal with this side yelling at you or that side yelling at you? And I think it's tough to say that the right decision was made, but the lesser of the two evils, I guess is the
Right.
best way to put it. That decision was made in terms of keeping him in the lineup and just honestly, do I dare say, like, the way things unfolded might have been best case scenario given the circumstances. The fact that Provorov wasn't going to go out in the sweater and they kept him in. I think every other situation you look at could have been worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, is that a general consensus or is that even just, I don't know.
I think it's like picking between three really bad options.
Mm-hmm.
It was a no-win. It's a no-win scenario.
Right.
Yeah.
This is the first year that we've done jerseys, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, every other year has been the tape, which I couldn't comment on whether or not Provorov taped his stick. I
He
don't
has
know.
not, and I also know that Ovi and some of the other Russians on Washington have not either. And so it's like I'm not excusing it, but it's not like an isolated. Oh my God, this guy's off the wing. Like there's something
trend.
There's something there that, from a religious viewpoint, none of us really understand. That all right, I guess you guys are there, and hopefully you can grow a little bit down the road. But that's where you are right now, and that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
I think one thing I want to say, and it kind of goes back to John's original point, like,
But
again, sorry, go ahead, Hoagie. No, okay.
sorry, no, I wanted to point out, like, isn't it funny that without taping the sticks, you couldn't single out a player like this, and it comes down to a player not wanting to wear a jersey, where it becomes a big uproar. Like everybody would tape their sticks during Pride Night, and we wouldn't notice. We don't know who's taping and who's not. Like it's such a minute detail during warm-ups that all of a sudden the player doesn't want to wear a jersey, and it's. I'm not praising it, whatever, but like it's such detail when it boils down to it.
I will admit, I feel like it was, and again, take this the way you want to take it, but I think it was a bigger deal when we taped the sticks when a guy like Curtis Gabriel, who is such a big advocate for the LGBTQ community, was on the team because, again, his stance on things, his representation for the community, I think that was a big focal point. Whereas now with someone like that that's not on the team, again, back to Hoagie's point in regards to Lawton and JVR doing such a fantastic job with these nights, it's not, they're not on like the national level that Curtis Gabriel was when he was here supporting that movement, because Curtis Gabriel is like a league-wide advocate for LGBTQ rights.
Casey, you were going to say something, buddy.
Yeah, I think playing off what you said originally, John, which I'm again, I don't agree with his stance, but I respect his right to do it. Where I'm really pissed is the fact that he could have sucked it up for his teammates and presumably his friends who like busted their ass on this thing. It's just like, dude, it's 15 minutes. Just do me a favor, help us out here a little bit.
Yep.
And I'm talking about JVR and Lawton, and I think like it sucks for them, man. Like this totally overshadowed a lot of really great work that they did. I don't know all the ins and outs of that program, but it sounds like Lawton did a pretty good job deflecting or navigating the questions to keep it on focus as much as he possibly could. But I think it goes back the selfish term is there, and
Right.
that's not going to leave him for the rest of his career. Like, I mean, it's now carbonized.
That's the scarlet letter.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, and the thing is it's like, when we bring it back to the people that we want a part of this team moving forward, and when we've dealt with such a fractured locker room in the past, like, I can say with 100% conviction, and I guarantee you it's not going to change. This is not a guy I want in my team's locker room.
Mm-hmm.
He clearly is putting himself before the team, the organization, the fans, and that just never bodes well.
Right.
And that's the second point that we wanted to get to in terms of how it impacts that locker room. And you hit the nail on the head. You've got an individual who seemingly did not hesitate to put himself in front of the team in terms of importance, in terms of the night itself. He decided that his convictions were larger than the team as a whole. And it's not indicative of a guy that you should want around the team, especially a guy who had been pegged basically from the start as a number one defender for this team. And it sucks. And I wonder how heavily it weighs on some people who are going to make the argument for him or for this not being that big of a deal, because they're going to say, well, we need him. He's on our hockey team. He's one of our best defenders, if not our best defender. And the people, side note, the people that are saying that Ivan Provorov sucks at hockey, like, come on. Right. You got to be kidding me with that crap.
Right.
But
go watch your once a week game on TNT and shut the F up.
Yeah. We have fun with those blackouts on ESPN Plus. But regardless, I think that again, we're going to say it a million times tonight, the selfishness, it's not good. It's not good.
There's one situation that keeps going through my head. And it's like, so obviously this was something that was thought about for a while, right? And he most likely talked about it with a bunch of people. And someone down the road, probably more than one person, said, let's think about the repercussions for your actions. And he goes to himself, I'll take anything that's thrown my way because this is what I've decided to do. And that's the biggest problem, because he stops there. He goes, I'll be able to handle anything. He doesn't think about the effect that it's going to have on the entire organization. It's the inability to go, my actions, there's going to be consequences for more than just me. It's going to affect the team I play for, the fans, my girlfriend. And is that worth it? I don't know. I guess for him it was, but I think that that shows his character, because you're just thinking about yourself and you're not thinking about what it's going to do to so many other people.
To counter that, though, and I hate sounding like I'm defending the guy, because I'm really not, but we all understand, because we've been through this with Fedotov, I'll say, intricacies of how Russia works. I should say we don't. I mean, we don't know how they work, because everything's a mystery. And I could be wrong in this assumption that Provorov still has family in Russia. He does.
Yep.
Okay. So the implications to him personally of going out there and going against the Russian beliefs of either the whole country of Russia, Russian Orthodox religion, what type of implications does that have on his family that still lives there? And maybe it was more well thought out, and people just aren't so cued in because they don't understand. Like we don't. I don't. But it's something we're not meant to understand because we haven't had to live through that.
Well, and also I think I think, Derek, I would totally buy it 100% if it was military based, right? If it was something that had to do with the war. I don't know how strictly religious Russian as the political power, Russia as the political power is. I don't know if those kind of things would affect his family's standing in Russia, but I would feel like it's a little less than if he was to, again, don a military jersey or something like that. But I don't know.
That could be seen as a threat. I feel like if you're wearing an American military jersey and you're Russian, and we're at odds right now.
Right.
But like, again, it's a matter of.
I think we'd all be like, take warm-ups off, dude. It's okay. Go play.
Like you're good. Like you stay back there, stretch a little bit longer.
Right.
But no, like it's a serious question that I'm curious about because, again, it's nothing any of us can relate to. Whether it's us four, whether it's whoever's listening right now, we can't relate to that. I can't sit here and spew whatever I want to spew and worry about the government being like, I'm gonna just off his family tomorrow. No big deal.
It might not even be the government's. I mean, like, I get your point, Derek, and like again with the military stuff, 100%. Like, yeah, that's that's insanity. But like, he might just be one of those. He might just be hardcore religious, man. And like, we can sit here and like not understand it. I don't understand why like that whole Jewish contingent wears black overcoats in the dead of summer. Like, I don't get it, but like, hey, it's your religion. Like, go for it. And so like he might just be like, he is a notoriously stoic and like not shady, but he's not in the limelight very much. We don't know a lot about on purpose there. And so I think he might just be like, hey, these are my beliefs and I'm sticking to them. And in his mind, he doesn't see the consequences. And that is the selfishness. I do think this plays into a year ago. I mean, believe it or not, it's a year ago when he was really pissed that the COVID protocol broke his Ironman streak. And he basically said that, they should cancel the games because they were canceling a ton of games at that time. But for some reason, they didn't cancel some Flyers games. He got really pissed.
The game in particular at Lake Tahoe.
Yep.
No, that was 2 years ago. Thank God.
That's right.
Yeah,
it was 2 years ago.
But in retrospect, Provorov wasn't really wrong there. We were doing ridiculous quarantine, stuff that had zero effect on a lot of things. But I think that's where like that was the first PR kind of sniff of the selfishness, and that's where the team was like, dude, like, come on, we're playing a game here. Forget your Iron Man streak. Let's just be sure that what's his name?
Do that when Keith Yandel was here.
Be sure Yandel. But this just plays into that narrative a little bit more, and to the point, he's going to get booed for the next 2 weeks until the All-Star break.
Oh, absolutely, it's warranted. I think it's warranted.
Although, I was actually shocked on looking on Twitter, like it's a very divided argument. Like I thought
you shocked at that.
Yeah, a little bit actually. I thought it was going to be pure cancel culture. Quite frankly,
sure.
I thought it was.
Yes, it depends on who you follow too.
Right, but even like even in some of the people that we follow, it's like in the chats, there's different debates going on and stuff like that. And I think I think people have points. It sucks when politics and religion seep our way into sports, which we use as an escape from politics and religion. And
just like a hockey podcast where we want to hang out for an hour and talk about hockey, and we're talking about this junk.
I'll be completely honest, and I mentioned it before. The reason we're doing this is all Ivan Provorov's fault.
Right.
Like, we should be talking about the Flyers winning 8 of their last 10 games. We absolutely should be, because that is the lone sunlight that we have. And then this just tornado comes through.
And the sad thing, the sad thing is too.
I did officially put my vote in for Ristolainen for All-Star after that game.
Good for you. Good for you, Casey.
And the sad thing is too, we would spend 30 seconds mentioning that last night was Pride Night if this didn't happen.
You're right.
And I'm not saying that as an insult or an insensitivity. It would not be a big topic of conversation.
Sure.
So I think that's something really interesting, because I think, like, ironically, this has given more PR and more notoriety to that cause than it ever would have gotten. And I'll read this quote that I found, and this is from an article from Front Office Sports that came out today, and said, the You Can Play co-founder Bill Kitts is quoted, "I would encourage a little bit of grace, especially when reading his own statement. He said that he respects everybody, and he might. So don't know that he is a hateful guy." And then he goes on to say, the fact that there's been such an uproar in response about Provorov is actually a sign of serious headway. And so I think it's like, you know what? Stirred up conversation for a cause, and yet probably done in the right way. And you wish it had been able to be done by auctioning off jerseys and stuff like that. But like, hey, it's a passionate subject, and people are talking about it.
Provorov's the sacrificial lamb here.
How much is that jersey?
Yeah. So, oh boy. So, I wanted to kind of get into more opinion here, but I want to go to Hoagie first. In terms of this decision that Provorov made, if there is a voice in the locker room that is going to step up and tell him, listen, bud, this is a terrible idea. I would implore you to think twice about doing this. Who's that guy? Whether it's case specific or just, in general, the voice that's going to be that mentor type to talk to him about this.
Buddy.
All right, Hoagie's muted. Here we go. Hold on. There we go. Nope. Hoagie's mic is muted. Oh boy, what's he doing?
Is it on your side, buddy? Is it muted on your side?
The mic is not connected. There we go.
There you go. Hey, welcome.
Oh, thanks. I think Lon's that leader, and I think he must have had private conversations with Provorov and organizational reps, whether it be Tortorella or Chuck or whoever, saying, dude, it's a bad idea. And Lawton did a great job last night in the questions of not answering about Provorov, but just going towards the Pride Night and how successful it was. And, it was a great win, stuff like this. I just think Lawton, you probably could talk Provorov's head off, and he just wouldn't budge because of how selfish he is. He's not going to listen to you. Anybody for that matter.
Can I tell you one person that's loving this though?
Tony
D'Angelo. Oh yeah.
He's like,
knew that was coming.
He's going, hey, good idea, Provi.
Right? What did I say in the group chat? They probably had a bet. They're like, listen, we're not going to wear that jersey. But before they could count to 3 and go out at the same time, D'Angelo's like, psych, threw the jersey on and took off. Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, in terms of, let's move towards wrapping this up here, but trade value. Because his name's been in the docket here in terms of looking to find a suitor to take on contract him, everything. Casey so eloquently put. I'm going to play the flip side of that, but I'll let you go first then, Casey.
I don't see how this benefits him. He is now viewed as a PR liability in the locker room. It cuts Chuck or whoever ends up being legit GM in this organization, cuts his legs out from having a strong negotiating position because of this. On the flip side, the guy can play. And so right now it's looking like Carolina, Nashville, and Dallas are looking like prime cities he would fit right in there.
All right, Hoagie, what about you?
I think it's tanked, but I feel somebody's going to want the skill, unfortunately. I mean, look at us. We went out and got Tony D'Angelo, who was a PR liability at one point. Like, someone's going to want him.
How about you, John?
I think in the short term, it does affect his trade value, but I think that the NHL brass has a short memory when it comes to this stuff. And I think that by the offseason, I don't think it'll be as much of a factor. And Carolina makes sense. I mean, they took Tony D'Angelo when he was much more of a liability than when we grabbed him, where it's like, that makes a ton of sense to me. But I don't think in the long term when we're going to be able to trade him, which I was always saying was the offseason, I don't think it'll affect his value that much.
For every Ivan Provorov type, there is a Boston type that will sign a guy like Mitchell Miller, knowing full well what he did. And yes, I don't want to call it correct.
The guy from Montreal that sexually assaulted some woman and took pictures.
Logan Mayu, I think his name was. Yeah, it's
bigger scumbags that are getting contracts.
It's a part of a much bigger conversation that we're not getting into tonight. But there is always going to be an opportunity for someone like that, especially when you're talking about a league that will value skill over moral compass. And in terms of finding a trade partner, if karma exists, the Flyers will find a team that has not had their Pride Night yet and make him go through a second.
Oh my God. Could you imagine?
That's all I want. I want to see what
Let's
happens.
skate in that one.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine.
Spite.
It.
I am interested if the Flyers are playing at any other team's Pride Night.
That's a good point.
I don't know. I mean,
we could look up league-wide Pride Nights. I
might
mean,
want
not
to
right now,
change that. But
yeah, well, we'll see. Maybe he's conveniently sick. So much for that Iron Man streak again, right? I think John hit it on the head right there. I think that enough time is going to go by before the trade actually happens that people aren't going to put nearly as much stock as they would right now. If trade conversations ensued right now and Chuck Fletcher's on the phone with somebody, they're dead in the water. That team will be like, no, don't want him. That's just too much to deal with right now. I don't want to. I'll deal with it later after the offseason settles and, we can just kind of try to sweep it under the rug like we always do. And that's that.
I think if he, especially in the next 3 weeks, 4 weeks, if he just keeps his head down, keeps his mouth shut, which he never talks to the press anyway, or never wants to talk to the press, and just goes through and plays decently, like, I think you're right. An off season is still in the works. And I think the irony of this is the fact that, 2 weeks ago, he said he'd be open to getting moved. Right. And then all of a sudden this happens. And you're like, but are you? It seems like you're riding this contract down to the dirt, bud.
I'll tell you though, if I'm the PR department, I'm like, if the media approaches you, no more snapping. You can respectfully refuse to decline, comment on this stuff, but no more of that just snappy stuff. You need to try to save a little face. I don't think it's going to do much right now.
A little less Jake Voracek, a little more maybe. I don't even know. I don't want to say John Tortorella, but at least he's short with his answers when he doesn't want to answer it. All right. I think it's time to put a bow on this one. I think that the conversations we had tonight were way more serious than we ever had. And it's part of a bigger conversation. Getting off my pedestal here for a second, but Casey, no, sorry, Hoagie. Let's end this on a high note, or at least a light note.
Do I need to do one?
Be very careful picking your dad joke tonight, my friends.
I only have one, actually.
We'll read it to yourself first.
It's good. It's a good one.
Okay, it's about owls.
What did one Dorito farmer say to the other Dorito farmer?
It's Cool Ranch.
Cool Ranch.
God, I feel like you did that one last time.
I don't know. I held it for a while.
Last one was the spider, the Bugweiser.
Yeah, Bugweiser.
Bug light. Yeah. That's what it was. Indeed different. But Hoagie, follow that up with where the folks are going to be able to find you.
If you can get through all the cesspool of Twitter, I'm on at Pod Street Hoags.
All right, Matt Casey.
Pod Street Casey on Twitter.
Spelled out.
What? That's like 100 followers. I don't care.
Be highly opinionated on Twitter, Matt Casey.
Yes.
Oh, I
get the likes. You won't get the replies.
Don't tell me my business, devil woman.
You caught the shit poop. All right, John Gove.
You can find this podcast on all your various podcast listening receptacles.
Solid. It was beautiful.
Thank you.
You can find me on Twitter at PodStreetBob. You can find John on Twitter at PodStreetGove. You can find us four on Twitter at PodSTBullies. You can also find our affiliates, fellows over at Flyers High and Wide. They're on Twitter at FlyersHW. Our buddies over at the 5 Minute Major podcast, all of us recording tonight, they're over on Twitter at 5 Minute Major Pod. And our friends over at the Hockey Focus, you can find them on Twitter at the Hockey Focus. Until next week, folks, let's hope for better days.
Bye now.